We are the most complex creature on this planet. A big-brained, two-legged mammal. We've risen from the raw materials of the earth to dominate and shape it. Wind the clock backwards, and the story of how we got to be us is a puzzle that defies all logic. Through nearly 4 billion years of evolutionary twists and turns, disasters strike. Predators threaten to wipe us out. From rodent to reptile, we face extinction at every turn. From the land into the water, fighting to survive every step of the way. From fish to worm, back to the very first spark of life. To a single, simple cell. This is the most extraordinary and probable story ever told. The story of mankind rising.
What does it mean that humanity is made in the image of God? We're going to answer that question. On the last day of creation, God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness." Thus, he finished his work with a personal touch. God formed Adam from the dust and gave him life by sharing his own breath. Because of this, humanity is unique among all of God's creations, having both a material body and an immaterial soul, spirit. Having the image or likeness of God means simply that we were made to resemble God. Adam did not resemble God in the sense of God's having flesh and blood. Scripture says that God is spirit and therefore exists without a body. However, Adam's body did mirror the life of God insofar as it was created in perfect health and was not subject to death. Imago Dei, Latin for the image of God, refers to the immaterial part of humanity. It sets human beings apart from the animal world, fits them for dominion God intended for them to have over the earth, and enables them to commune with their maker. It is a likeness, mentally, morally, and socially. Let's break it down a little further. Mentally, humanity was created to reason and make choices. This is a reflection of God's intellect and freedom. Anytime someone invents a machine, writes a book, paints a landscape, enjoys a symphony, calculates a sum, or names a pet, he or she is proclaiming the fact that we are made in God's image. Morally, humanity was created in righteousness and perfect innocence, a reflection of God's holiness. Our conscience, or moral compass, is a vestige of that original state. Whenever someone writes a law, recoils from evil, praises good behavior, or feels guilty, they are confirming the fact that we are made in God's own image. Socially, humanity was created for fellowship. This reflects God's triune nature and his love. In the Garden of Eden, humanity's primary relationship was with God. In fact, God made the first woman because it is not good for man to be alone. Every time someone marries, makes a friend, hugs a child, or attends church, they are demonstrating the fact that we are made in the likeness of God. Part of being made in God's image is that we have the capacity to make free choices. Although they were given a righteous nature, Adam and Eve made an evil choice to rebel against their Creator. In doing so, they marred the image of God within themselves and passed that damaged likeness on to all their descendants. Today, we still bear the image of God, but we also bear the scars of sin. Mentally, morally, socially, and physically, we show the effects of sin. The good news is that when God redeems an individual, he begins to restore the original image of God, creating a new self created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. That redemption is only available by God's grace through faith in Jesus Christ as our Savior from the sin that separates us from God. Through Christ, we are made new creations in the likeness of God. That answers the question, what does it mean that humanity is made in the image of God? Research this question further on our website, godquestions.org. Be sure to click subscribe and check out these other questions.
Show. Speaking of Berkeley, while we're picking on them for a moment, oftentimes they're top level PhDs that sometimes don't know these basic things. This comes out of Berkeley, and I find this fascinating because I come from a math background. My dad taught advanced mathematics for university professor for years, teaching advanced mathematics. I'm part-time. He did this while he worked at Shell. So I grew up with this. And Rice University had actually done math tests to see if evolution could even work. There's no mathematical possibility. You need things to improve over time. Obviously, there's not going to be math for that. It's not going to be supported by the universal language of mathematics in any way. This painting behind me was done by Salvador Dali. What you've got on this painting is Jesus Christ, and he is on top of a tesseract. What a tesseract is, it's a four-dimensional object, a higher dimensional object in a lower dimension or three-dimensional reality. It's unfolded into that reality. So you're only seeing the edges of the actual object, the larger object, just its edges unfolded in. God seems to love geometry and numbers and mathematics. In fact, he's got an entire book titled Numbers. Now, coincidentally, this object, the tesseract, makes the shape of the cross. After the Hebrews had their exodus from the land of the pyramids, in the book of Numbers, when they're moving loose in the wilderness, and God can come off like he's sort of a very particular guy. He doesn't do a lot of explaining either. This object, the tesseract, makes the shape of the cross in our three-dimensional reality, upon which Salvador Dali drew the Savior on top of that dimensional tesseract. Well, in the case of the Hebrews wandering in the wilderness, God said you can't camp northeast or northwest. You can only camp this wide, and up north. And then he wanted the tribes numbered so you'd have a count. Well, if you go through and you do the numbers, the math, and use the exact instructions that God gave to the Hebrews for their camp, with the Levites in the middle, the heart of that camp, it makes the shape of a giant cross wandering on the desert floor. It's often important to listen more because it will turn out that those pages, those scriptures, those numbers all have a meaning. The three nails that were in Jesus's hands and feet, it wasn't the nails that held him to that cross. It was his love for you and me. Now, speaking of dimensions, right here on this page, I have two little characters. I have Tom and I have Sally. Now, Tom and Sally are living in a two-dimensional world. We live in a three-dimensional world. Tom and Sally are on a sheet of paper. They live in a two-dimensional world. So Tom and Sally, in their world, they're very hindered. See, I can get up face to face with Tom or Sally, and they don't even know that I'm there in their two-dimensional world. I could pass a ball through their world, and all they would see is a circle open and close. In fact, when Tom looks over at Sally, all he sees is a straight line. Tom can't even see Sally as she is. But from my three-dimensional perspective, I can see the fullness of Tom and Sally. And talking about dimensions, that brings us immediately to time. And I've often said, if it's a problem that Stephen Hawking couldn't solve, it must be a problem so simple even a child could understand it. Time has been a puzzle since the beginning. Let's see if we can solve a brief history of time in under about 60 seconds. Now, let me ask you this. If in a higher dimension you can see a greater picture more, what do you think God sees when he looks at us? Your reality, your three-dimensional reality, its very base, is made of quantum particles. Reality is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. That comes from the Jewish physicist Niels Bohr. Those particles are the quantum particles. Why the quantum particles break all of the rules, all the laws of physics, and drive the guys in the science videos crazy? Because they're breaking all the standard laws. Because those particles, you're looking at the moment that reality becomes when you zone into those particles. It's interactive. So those particles are making up a non-random reality. If reality did not have a source, if something were not making those particles, it would be totally random, like fuzz on your screen. But yet it's not. It's precise every minute. And just as Max Planck gave us measurements for, it's moving as a continuum, a live stream. And just as we find in our measurement problems, it behaves both as packets and as waves, simultaneously, both at once. And the little particles at the base of it are going bloop, 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 and appearing so fast that it makes that continuum. So I guess the question would really be, where are those particles coming from? Where's that live stream flowing through? What's producing this image we call reality? Now, seeing as that's the case, or appears to be the case, should we be terribly surprised in those ancient pages? Because this planet comes with a book. Should we be terribly surprised in those pages we're being told that reality has a trash folder, and that the stuff in that trash folder doesn't get deleted? And that's a bad thing. A trash folder for the stuff that bites the hand that feeds. Now, I want to take this a step further and come out of the fourth dimension into the third dimension. If I take a cube, a three-dimensional cube, just a box, a perfectly square box, like you might get at a store, and I were to open that box up and make it a two-dimensional geometric object, well, it becomes a cross. And by the way, portions of that mathematics worked on by Stephen Hawking himself surrounding black holes and large objects. You have something called time dilation. I don't know whether a black hole is real or not, but that's really a mute to the argument. I'm talking about the math of it for just a second. If you have a large object in space, then time mathematically would slow down. You have whole movies about this, Event Horizon and such, and you're going in and the time has stopped. You go up and you come back and the brother is younger. All sorts of neat little equations for this. Time behaves in funny ways. Well, if you've got a condensation of mass, that's your particles that are making up your black hole or your large planet or whatever it is that's slowing the time down, well, that's the same thing that occurs on your computer screen when you are producing a large object on your screen. It's got to render all of those pixel particles. And around that rendering, the time, the subset, just like you're in a subset of reality, the subset of time has slowed down around that object. Not only this, but if I take a look at this cross made out of a cube, a tesseract can also be a cube made into a cross. Well, if I count the squares on this two-dimensional cube made from a three-dimensional object, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. More than this, for there to be an image on the screen, an image in reality, a three-dimensional reality, that means that something has to be providing all of those pixels. And the reason they're breaking all of the rules is because they're coming from the place that makes the rules. When you hear the science guys say that there is no way on God's green earth that this place could have been created in 6 days, on the seventh God rested. Well, brothers, have you not read Max Planck's work? This man here gave you the measurements for time. And once you're doing your measurement, they're now behaving according to all your standard laws of physics, because no matter how quickly you do your measurement of those particles, it's already become a part of the past by sheer virtue of doing the measurement. It's become a part of the past. It's no longer movable or changeable or fixable. When you're looking at the particles, the quantum particles, you're looking at the future, the place where reality becomes. You're looking at that very second. If I'm reading Max properly, Not only was this created in 6 days, but every second, according to your own measurements, this place is being recreated and maintained as those pixels that are flowing through. It's being recreated millions of times a second. And that's why they're appearing like this. When you're looking at your computer screen, which is a collection of pixels, and mind you, when you're looking at a person on that screen, you're not looking at the person, you're looking at an illusion of that person. So what am I looking at when I'm looking at you? And you're consciously plugged in and running loose in a body in this little place. This place, reality, the bed, our home, has a source. And I didn't pick for that bed to be there when I said that. What is consciousness? Where's that at? How much does that weigh? When you take the information on a hard drive, does it weigh more when you fill up the thumb drive than it does when it's empty? What is a thought, an idea, that live stream? Where does it come from? In the Bible, it says you are already seated in heavenly places. In layman's terms, you're plugged into this place, and when your body falls dead, where are you now? Guys, I hope this man is in heaven and that there was a change in his life. But you media fellas, the only time you gave him exposure or allowed his books to sell is if you could push him out there to tell everybody in that chair that science says there is no God. Men who believe in science know that the universe has no space for God. The way he would tell you that is out of his one eye that worked. And his chair would allow him to talk to you through his one eye. Reality is a subset of a much larger, far more complex reality, that it comes from a larger place, not a smaller place, which is what your current scientists say, that in the beginning there was nothing and then it exploded. I don't know how you get the math for that. I come from a little bit of a math background. Now, when you're looking at the construct of time, God would be outside of, greater than time. If I took a circuit board, like this board right here, and on one end of the circuit board, I put a big red button, and on the other end of the circuit board, I put a screen, just a digital screen. And then the purpose of the circuit board was to come up with a mathematical equation. So when I hit the button, the circuits, the little electrodes would take the time that it takes to go through the circuit board. That could be nanos of a second. And on the other end, boom, it comes up with whatever the answer to the equation is. Well, here's the thing, is that the information that equaled the answer to that equation was available before I hit the button. They gave Stephen Hawking, Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, the father of physics, his position, his chair at Cambridge University. That made my heart sink. In the beginning, then there was nothing and it exploded. You are living in an incredibly intelligent and precise place. All of the stars that you see in the heavens above, you're situated in a way specifically where you can look at them. And everything here, coincidentally, goes in circles. And inside that subset of reality, all the biological stuff appears to be built right out of scratch from digital coding, three-dimensional digital coding. And DNA, that is and has always been the living software, the actual biological software of life itself. With Sir Isaac Newton, the father of your modern physics, who stated, if the Bible be true, the time is coming in the future when men shall travel at 50 miles an hour or more. That was Sir Isaac Newton. And the construct of that reality, everything goes round and round, round and round, round and round. If you are looking at space, no matter how one believes that space works, everything here is in circles, going round and round, round and round. And that's no matter what you think is going around what. It goes round and round, round and round, round and round. Just like a test environment on a computer. So, and in these books, you're going to go through time and consciousness and the origin of these things. So inside the base of reality, all of the biological stuff, like you and me and all the plants, have They have programming code, coincidentally inside the blood. Then, just to top that level, underneath the base of it, you've got the quantum particles, just like on a computer program, the ones and zeros, yeses and nos, which make up the base framework of this thing we call reality. And reality appears to have a source, a live stream feeding it. So when you're talking about time, that's the yod back there, the 10, that dangles like a thought between heaven and earth, a number of completion. When you're talking about time, you are never living in the past. You are also never living in the future. No matter when it is, you're always standing on the moment that matters most, the moment that determines everything. No matter when it is always right now. But everything here, including your biblical pages, and most assuredly this set of things, brings to full color life the fact that you appear to be living in a test. They're all high definition imagery on every single page. So you're going to be taking a journey through the ancient world. This set of things is the beginning of your history. Every single page is high definition images, full glossy. The fronts and the backs are beautiful. Here are the words of Sir Isaac Newton, the father of physics. About the time of the end, a body of men will be raised up who will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist upon their literal interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition. It was Isaac Newton. But Berkeley ran these tests. It's called mitochondrial Eve, a dirty little secret. This was done by Berkeley. And they were looking at mutation rates. Now, by sheer virtue of doing the test alone, where your mutations are errors, they're junk and that's collecting over time in the code. So by trying to go backwards to a mutation-free state by sheer virtue of the test, it's like these people don't even think. By sheer virtue of doing the test, you're rewinding to a perfect state. Now, what they did to fix the problem, let me tell you the fix, because you read these extensive, very confusing articles in science journals and all this, which is common par for what they did. And the Wikipedia page for it is, you could take 10 PhDs and you couldn't screw in a light bulb with what they're saying on those pages. Let me break it down for you like this. They mixed monkey numbers with human numbers to get the numbers that worked for them. Anywhere else that would be considered fraud, but we're in an upside down world, right? So why not? When they looked at the actual real world data, which you can do, you rewind backwards, you find two things, just like the two trees. You find number one, that every race, creed, and color rewinds backwards to a single woman on this planet. That was an unexpected find. They weren't hoping for that, I assure you. But more than that, using the actual data, that woman lived 6,000 years ago. And they can run from those numbers all you want, but that's what the actual data, no matter what they let them give you convoluted stuff. I'm telling you, I come from a math background. I'm telling you the real numbers. You run the numbers yourself. A mere 6,000 years old. The article titles, and this was in 1998. No need to panic. Fellas, we really do. I'm just being straight with you. In a general practical sense, we need the science to step out of fantasy land and make its way back to the world of reality. Charles Darwin was a whiny little 22-year-old that came from a well-to-do family who was trying to find something to even do with them. He had a degree in theology from Oxford. What are you going to do with it? He's got a degree in theology, not any sciences, from Oxford University. They'll portray him on walls and things as if he was going on a science expedition on a major ship. Science expedition, that was the HMS Beagle. That stands for Her Majesty's ship. It's a military vessel. He's out there drawing finches and stuff. What I'm telling you is this, he was the only guy on a boat without a job. There's a 22-year-old, 150, more than that, years ago, who wrote the basis for all of your sciences by theorizing that the Planet of the Apes movies were real, that there was a monkey, that everybody was a monkey in his 22-year-old view, right? because he was smarter than everybody else. He died a miserable old man. And his theory not only disagrees with every single written record on earth. So you have to believe that that 22-year-old knew better than every single person that had lived before him and every document that they wrote, and that they didn't even understand what they were writing in the very hours that they lived in, but instead that they were monkey people. But further than that, one would have to believe that every single science we have, from the little cells that we look at in our skin to the stars and the heavens above, is wrong, and that that 22-year-old from 150 years ago is correct. Everything here is the reverse of Darwin's theory. His theory says things improve over time. Your car parked outside in your drive is not improving over time, nor can it self-build itself. Everything here declines over time. Oh, with one exception, except for things that have digital coding, like the entire construct of you is made like a little bitty zip file. A cell combines with an egg, and it opens up with complete body plans of digital coding to literally write a human being into reality, birthed into this place, consciously plugged in, and all of it from scratch. So you hardcore atheists, guys, I think you're definitely going to have to leave Maneto's Zeus ruling for 20 years in there for at least that, throwing lightning bolts down at mud puddles to get them to come to life so they can turn into monkeys and monkey people, because we all know that if you breed enough monkeys, you obviously get people. I mean, that's scientific, correct? Guys, you find whales in every desert and seashells on every mountain on Earth, not monkey men. So when the hardcore occultists of this world today share with me, some of them have and do, that they do their little ceremonies and private rituals or black magic sex parties. That's really what they are. Involve demonic stuff in their black magic sex parties. And things step out of thin air. Or going all the way back to a Merkur or Nimrod, who told me that he summons the Inky to step out of this dimensional hole right here, right into this place. Well, gentlemen, take a sip of your brandy in the back room, because I believe them. In fact, let me share with you this. I actually call them the deal cutters. It's impressive. First time you see it, something pop right out of thin air. Well, either impressive or it's terrifying. But no matter which, you got to wonder why something's popping out of thin air to talk or pay attention to you. It's kind of unusual, isn't it? No matter what they're doing, I promise you, they're trying to cut a deal. And those deal cutters always want you to say certain words. Isn't that strange? It's almost like you're dealing with, I don't know, intelligent snakes. And speaking of snakes, that hops us right back where we started, to the first serpent. Just like the first message to Pharaoh is a snake, or the law of first mention, right here in Genesis 3:5. Ye shall be as gods. Now, doesn't God himself state, choose this day who you serve? And since this is Manetho here that wrote both your bogus and your bad timelines, tells me that, well, right here he states that he likes Enoch. Well, Manetho's in luck. I like Enoch too. In fact, it's a long prophecy in the book of Enoch that takes you right through the hours of the pyramid, which are a foreshadowing leading right to the moments that you're living in now and the time period to come of the Antichrist. But right there in the book of Enoch, he's telling you the whole story in advance, before that flood of the Exodus. I think even Manetho would want me to go ahead and let Enoch share it. As much as I like Manetho up there, I think I'm going to have to bail on his timeline and pass on this one. I think we're going to have to be doing some adjustments to his Truth of Thoth timeline in this documentary. going a step further than all of that, and I speak boldly, respectfully, right in this second, right now. University and secular guys that have been stating that the Exodus didn't happen, or there was no evidence of the Exodus, and have been fighting against the veracity of the Bible, some of you investing your entire lives in it. I know what the source of that is. I want you to know this, and I speak to you boldly, right this second, right here, right to this screen. That all ends right here, right now, and is ending today. Boom.
Some folks dream of the wonders they'll do before their time on this planet is through. Some just don't have anything planned. They hide their hopes and their heads in the sand. Now I don't say who's wrong, who's right, but if by chance you are here for the night, then all I need is an hour or two to tell the tale of a dreamer like you. We all dream alone. Some are lucky, some are not. But if you think it, want it, dream it, then it's real. You are what you feel. But all that I say can be told another way. In the story of a boy whose dreams came true. And it could be you.